Hyunwoo sat in the dark control room, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he monitored the deep space communication arrays. The night shift at the Seoul Deep Space Monitoring Station was usually quiet, filled with nothing but background, radiation and the occasional signal from their own satellites. But tonight was different. The first signal came at 3:47 a.m. local time. It was strong, deliberate, and definitely not from Earth. Hyunwoo's heart raced as he adjusted the receivers, trying to clean up the transmission. The signal repeated every 30 seconds, broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself, checking the equipment twice. Everything was working perfectly. The signal was real. He quickly called his supervisor, then began recording everything. Within an hour, Dr. Yoonji arrived at the station with a team of linguists and scientists. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had spent years studying the possibility of alien contact, but never expected it to happen like this. "Play it again," Yoonji said, leaning over Hyunwoo's shoulder as the strange sounds filled the room. The transmission was clearly artificial, with mathematical patterns that suggested intelligent origin. "It's repeating the same message," Hyunwoo explained. "Every 30 seconds on 17 different frequencies. Whatever they're saying, they want to make sure someone hears it." The team worked through the night, running the signal through every analysis program they had. By morning, they had made a breakthrough. The message contained basic mathematical concepts, followed by what appeared to be a warning. Admiral Dae-ho arrived at the station as the sun rose over Seoul. He was a tall, serious man who commanded Earth's small defense fleet. Most people thought the fleet was unnecessary, but Dae-ho had always believed that humanity needed to be ready for anything. "What do we know?" he asked Yoonji as they walked through the facility. "It's definitely from an advanced civilization," she replied, showing him the decoded portions. "They're using mathematical concepts that we've only recently discovered. But Admiral, there's something else. The message isn't friendly." They entered the main analysis room, where Hyunwoo and the linguistics team had been working all night. Computer screens showed wave patterns, mathematical formulas, and translation attempts. "We've managed to decode about 40% of the message," Dr. Park, the lead linguist, explained. "It appears to be some kind of official declaration. We're getting words that translate roughly to forbidden, quarantine, and savage." Admiral Dae-ho frowned. "Are they talking about us?" "We believe so," Yoonji said quietly. "The message references our solar system specifically. It mentions the third planet from our sun, which is obviously Earth." Over the next week, more signals arrived. Each one was slightly different, but they all carried the same basic message. Slowly, the translation team pieced together what became known as the Golden Decree. The message came from something called the Vorthak Empire, which claimed to rule 12 star systems. According to the decree, the Vorthak considered themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had observed many species and judged which ones were worthy of joining galactic society. Humanity was not among them. The Golden Decree declared that Terran space was forbidden to all galactic species. No ship was allowed to enter or leave the solar system. The reason given was that humans were primitive savages, whose violent nature posed a threat to galactic peace. "They're calling us dangerous," Hyunwoo said during one of the daily briefings. "But they're the ones threatening to attack anyone who comes near us." "It's worse than that," Yoonji added, reviewing the latest translations. "They claim they're protecting the galaxy from us and protecting us from ourselves. They think we're too stupid and violent to handle contact with advanced civilizations." Admiral Dae-ho studied the translated messages with growing anger. "So they've decided to lock us in our own solar system like animals in a cage." The implications were staggering. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't. But they also knew they were considered unworthy by their galactic neighbors. The Vorthak Empire had made humanity prisoners in their own home. But there was something the Vorthak didn't know. While they had been watching humanity from a distance, making judgments about human nature and technology, they had missed something important. Humans had been developing new technologies at an incredible pace. In secret military facilities around the world, Human scientists had been working on projects that pushed the boundaries of physics. They had developed quantum computers that could solve problems in seconds that would take traditional computers years. They had created new materials that were stronger than anything previously imagined. Most importantly, they had been working on faster-than-light travel. Dr. Jae-min had been leading the FTL project from a hidden facility in the mountains of South Korea. His team had made breakthroughs in quantum manipulation that allowed them to bend space-time itself. They were only months away from their first test flight when the Golden Decree arrived. "The aliens think we're primitive," Jae-min told Admiral Daeho during a secret meeting. "But our technology is advancing in ways they haven't seen before. We're not following their path of development." Admiral Daeho nodded. "What do you need to complete the project?" "Time and resources," Jae-min replied. "If they're really planning to quarantine us, we need to be ready for anything." The government quickly approved massive funding for defense projects. Public announcements spoke of asteroid defense systems and solar exploration. But the real purpose was preparing for contact with hostile aliens. Meanwhile, the signals from space continued. The Vorthak Empire was making sure their message was received by every listening post on Earth. They wanted humanity to know their place in the galactic order. But as the weeks passed, something strange began to happen. Human radio telescopes detected new signals from different sources. These weren't from the Vorthak Empire, but from other species throughout the galaxy. Most of these signals were fragments, pieces of communications between distant worlds. Hyun-woo spent his nights analyzing these intercepts, slowly building a picture of galactic civilization. What he found surprised him. The Vorthak Empire wasn't universally loved. Many species seemed to fear them, and some communications suggested that the Empire ruled through intimidation rather than respect. "They're not the peaceful civilization they claim to be," Hyun-woo reported to the team. "From what I can tell, they've conquered most of their territory through force." This revelation changed everything. The Vorthak weren't protecting the galaxy from violent humans. They were protecting their own power from any species that might challenge them. Humanity's quarantine wasn't about keeping dangerous savages contained. It was about preventing a potentially powerful species from joining the galactic community. The Golden Decree wasn't a protective measure. It was a preemptive strike against competition. As this realization spread through Earth's governments and scientific communities, the response began to change. Instead of trying to prove humanity was worthy of contact, they began preparing for the possibility that contact might not be friendly. Admiral Daeho increased military preparations, while Dr. Yoonji worked to understand more about galactic politics. But it was Hyun-woo who made the most important discovery. Hidden in the background noise of one transmission, he found something that chilled him to the bone. It was a communication from a Vorthak military commander to his fleet. The message was simple and terrifying. The Empire was preparing to send warships to Terran space. The Golden Decree was just the beginning. 6 months after the Golden Decree, they came. The first Sentinel sphere appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning. It was massive, nearly 10 kilometers across, and it moved with purpose toward the outer planets. Earth's deep space. Telescopes tracked its approach, and within hours, similar objects appeared at different points around the solar system. Jae-min was working late in his laboratory when the emergency alert reached him. He rushed to the main control room where dozens of scientists and military officers were watching the screens in stunned silence. "How many are there?" he asked Admiral Daeho, who stood at the center of the room studying tactical displays. 12, confirmed. Possibly more, the Admiral replied grimly. "They're positioning themselves in a perfect sphere around our entire solar system. Whatever these things are, they're setting up a blockade." The Sentinel spheres were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They appeared to be made of a dark metal that absorbed most electromagnetic radiation, making them difficult to study. But as they moved into position, they began to emit powerful energy fields that Earth's sensors could detect. So-young arrived from the diplomatic corps that evening. She had been working on protocols for first contact with alien civilizations, but this wasn't the peaceful meeting she had prepared for. "We need to try to communicate with them," she insisted during the emergency briefing. Maybe they're just patrol ships. Maybe we can negotiate. Negotiate what? Admiral Deho asked. They've surrounded us like we're prisoners. Dr. Yunji pulled up the latest analysis on the main screen. The energy signatures suggest these are automated systems. There might not be anyone inside to talk to. As if to prove her point, one of the spheres suddenly activated. A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from its surface, striking an asteroid in the outer belt. The rock, which had been several hundred meters across, simply vanished. That was a test, Kyung-ho said quietly. The military strategist had been studying the alien formations all day. They're showing us what happens if we try to leave. Over the following days, more tests confirmed their fears. Any object larger than a basketball that tried to cross the invisible boundary around the solar system was immediately destroyed. The Sentinels were programmed to enforce a perfect quarantine. But Jaemin's team was not sitting idle. They had been analyzing the Sentinel technology using every sensor Earth possessed. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The good news is that we're starting to understand how they work, Jaemin explained to the assembled leaders. They use quantum field manipulation to create their energy beams. It's similar to what we've been developing, but much more advanced. And the bad news? Admiral Deho asked. The bad news is that they're designed to be completely invulnerable. Their shields can absorb any conventional weapon we might use against them. The Vorthak Empire built these things to be unstoppable. So Young leaned forward. But you said conventional weapons. What about unconventional ones? Jaemin smiled, for the first time in days. That's where it gets interesting. The Sentinels are protected against energy weapons, kinetic weapons, even nuclear explosives, but they're not protected against something that doesn't exist in their technology database. He pulled up a complex diagram showing quantum field interactions. We've been developing a completely different approach to faster-than-light travel. Instead of using conventional quantum manipulation, we've learned to work with exotic matter, states that shouldn't theoretically exist. In simple terms, Admiral Deho asked, we've accidentally created a weapon that their shields can't stop, because their builders never imagined anyone would be crazy enough to try what we're trying. The revelation energized the entire defense project. While the Vorthak Empire had developed their technology over thousands of years, following predictable paths of advancement, humanity had taken shortcuts that bypassed conventional limitations. Kyung-ho began developing tactical plans based on the Sentinels' weaknesses. If we can disable even one of them, we can create a gap in their blockade. But we need to be careful. The moment we attack, they'll know we're not as primitive as they thought. Meanwhile, So Young worked on a different approach. What if we could capture one intact? If we can study their technology up close, we might learn more about the Vorthak Empire. The plan they developed was ambitious and dangerous. Jaemin's team would modify one of their experimental FTL ships to carry a new type of weapon. Instead of trying to destroy a Sentinel, they would use exotic matter fields to disrupt its control systems and capture it. But first, they needed to test their theories. The test came 3 weeks later. A small probe, no larger than a satellite, was launched toward the edge of the solar system. It carried the first working exotic matter generator that Jaemin's team had completed. The Sentinels detected it immediately. Energy beams lanced out from the nearest sphere, but something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed, the probe seemed to slip between dimensions, reappearing on the other side of the energy beam unharmed. It worked, Jaemin whispered, staring at the telemetry data. The exotic matter field displaced it just enough to avoid the beam. The success of the test changed everything. If they could avoid the Sentinels' weapons, they could potentially escape the solar system. But Admiral Deho had a different idea. We're not running, he announced during the next strategy meeting. If we run, they'll just follow us. We need to send a message that humanity isn't as helpless as they think. The plan they settled on was bold. They would use their new technology to disable one of the Sentinels and study it. But they would do it in a way that sent a clear message to the Vorthak Empire. Kyung-ho's intelligence network had been monitoring alien communications since the Sentinels arrived. They had learned that the spheres reported back to the Empire regularly, sending status updates about the quarantine. If we time this right, Kyung-ho explained, we can disable a sentinel just as it's sending a report. The Empire will know something happened, but they won't know what. The attack ship was small, barely large enough for a crew of 3. Jae-min insisted on piloting it himself, along with 2 volunteers from his engineering team. The ship was equipped with the most advanced exotic matter generator they had built, along with systems designed to analyze and possibly control Sentinel technology. They launched on a Tuesday morning, using Earth's rotation to hide their departure from the Sentinel's sensors. The ship moved slowly at first, pretending to be space debris, before accelerating toward the nearest sphere. Remember, Admiral Daeho's voice crackled over the radio. You're not trying to destroy it. Just disable its weapons and communication systems. The approach took 6 hours. As they got closer to the Sentinel, Jae-min could see details that Earth's telescopes had missed. The sphere was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Beginning the attack run, he reported back to Earth. The exotic matter generator hummed to life, creating fields of energy that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. As the ship approached the Sentinel, the sphere's weapon systems activated. Energy beams lanced out, but they passed harmlessly through space where the ship should have been. The exotic matter fields were displacing the ship slightly out of normal spacetime, making it impossible for the Sentinel's targeting systems to lock on. We're inside their shield perimeter, Jae-min reported. Deploying the disruptor. A focused beam of exotic matter struck the Sentinel's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the geometric patterns on its surface began to flicker and fade. The sphere's energy fields collapsed, and it went dark. Target neutralized, Jae-min announced, beginning salvage operations. As his team worked to extract technology samples from the disabled Sentinel, something else was happening throughout the galaxy. The sudden loss of contact with one Sentinel had triggered automatic alerts in the Vorthak Empire's monitoring systems. For the first time since the quarantine began, the Empire was forced to consider a possibility they had dismissed as impossible. The primitive savages of Terra had somehow fought back, and they had won. The Vorthak ship appeared on Mars like a falling star, its hull glowing from atmospheric entry as it crashed into the red desert. The Eternal Glory had been conducting a routine patrol near the edge of Terran space when its quantum drive suffered a catastrophic failure, stranding the crew millions of miles from home. Commander Veltis of the Vorthak Empire crawled from the wreckage, his breathing apparatus damaged but functional. Around him, his crew of 12 worked to salvage what they could from their ship. The crash had destroyed most of their long-range communications, but they still had emergency beacons that would eventually be detected by Imperial forces. How long until rescue? Asked Sub-Commander Kethril, nursing a broken arm. 3 days, maybe 4, Veltis replied, looking up at the alien sky. The Empire knows our patrol route. When we miss our next report, they'll send search vessels. What the Vorthak didn't know was that their crash had been detected within minutes by human monitoring stations. The Mars colonies had been established only recently, but they maintained constant surveillance of their surroundings. Minho received the alert at his desk in the New Sol Mars colony. As head of emergency response for the outer settlements, he had dealt with mining accidents and equipment failures, but never anything like this. Are we sure it's alien? He asked his deputy, reviewing the sensor data. Definitely, came the reply. The metal composition doesn't match anything we've ever seen, and the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever crashed out there, it's not from Earth. Minho assembled a rescue team within 2 hours. The decision hadn't been easy. These were the same aliens who had imprisoned humanity in their own solar system. But leaving sentient beings to die in the Martian desert wasn't something humans could do. Hanul joined the expedition as their xenolinguist. She had been studying the Vorthak communications for months, trying to understand their language and culture. This would be her first chance to communicate with them directly. Remember, Sang-Wook briefed the team as they prepared to leave. We don't know if they're hostile. Keep your weapons ready, but don't shoot unless they attack first. The crash site was 50 kilometers from the colony, in a region of rocky canyons and ancient riverbeds. The Eternal Glory had carved a long furrow in the Martian soil before coming to rest against a cliff face. Smoke still rose from its damaged hull. "I'm reading life signs," the team's medic reported as they approached. 12 individuals, all alive but some injured. Minho ordered the team to approach slowly, hands visible and weapons lowered. As they crested the final ridge, they got their first look at the Vorthak Empire. The aliens were taller than humans, with elongated limbs and pale blue skin. They wore form-fitting suits that seemed to regulate their body temperature and atmosphere. When they saw the humans approaching, they immediately formed a defensive circle around their injured. "Stop there," Commander Veltis called out in accented but understandable English. "We know you are the savage species of this system. We demand you leave us alone." Haniul stepped forward, her hands raised peacefully. "We're here to help," she said, speaking slowly and clearly. "Your ship is damaged. You need medical assistance." "We need nothing from primitives," Veltis replied, but his voice was weaker now. Haniul could see that he was injured more severely than he wanted to admit. "Your people are hurt," she continued. "Some might die without treatment. We have medical facilities at our colony." The standoff continued for several minutes. The Vorthak were clearly suffering from their injuries in the hostile Martian environment, but their pride prevented them from accepting help from species they considered inferior. It was Sub-Commander Kethril who broke first. He collapsed from blood loss, and his fellow Vorthak were unable to provide adequate medical care with their damaged equipment. "He's dying," Minho told Veltis bluntly. "We can save him, but only if you let us." The decision went against everything Veltis had been taught about humans. According to Imperial doctrine, Terrans were violent savages who would kill or enslave any aliens they encountered. But watching his subordinate die while help was offered forced him to reconsider. "Why?" he asked Haniul. "Why would you help your enemies?" "Because it's the right thing to do," she replied simply. The rescue operation took 6 hours. Human medics worked alongside Vorthak crew members to stabilize the injured and salvage critical equipment from the crashed ship. The cultural exchange was immediate and profound. Dr. Park, the colony's chief medical officer, was amazed by Vorthak biology. "Their cellular structure is completely different from ours," he told Minho privately. "But the basic principles of trauma care still apply." Meanwhile, Haniul worked with the Vorthak crew to establish better communication. She learned that they had expected to be killed or captured by the savage Terrans. The fact that humans were helping them despite the quarantine was incomprehensible to their worldview. "Your empire calls us dangerous," Haniul said to Veltis as they waited for medical treatment to finish. "But you're the ones who built weapons to keep us prisoner, in our own home. You do not understand," Veltis replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "Humans are unstable. Your species has a history of violence and war. The Empire protects the galaxy from such chaos." "And who protects the galaxy from the Empire?" Haniul asked. The question troubled Veltis more than he wanted to admit. During his years of service, he had seen the Empire conquer and subjugate dozens of species. The official justification was always the same. They were bringing order and civilization to primitive worlds. But the reality was often brutal suppression of any resistance. As the days passed, the cultural exchange deepened. Sangwook's security team learned about Vorthak military technology while sharing details about human defensive capabilities. The aliens were shocked to discover how advanced human technology had become. "This is impossible," Kethril said when he saw human quantum computers in operation. "Your species should not have this level of technology for at least another 1,000 years. Maybe your empire doesn't know as much about us as they think," Minho replied. The real shock came when Jamin arrived from Earth with a team of engineers. They had come to study the crashed Vorthak ship, but what they found exceeded their expectations. The Eternal Glory was a reconnaissance vessel equipped with advanced sensors and communication systems. "We can learn everything about their military capabilities from this ship," Jamin told Sangwook privately. "But more importantly, we can learn about their weaknesses." The Vorthak technology was impressive but predictable. The Empire had developed their science along traditional paths, creating powerful but inflexible systems. Human technology, born from desperation and innovation, had found ways around conventional limitations. They're like a giant with glass bones, Jamin explained. Powerful but brittle. They've never faced an enemy that fought differently than they expected. Commander Velthis gradually realized that he was witnessing something that would change the galaxy. The humans weren't the savage primitives described in Imperial propaganda. They were a sophisticated civilization that had developed in isolation, creating technologies and philosophies that the Empire had never encountered. When he tried to contact the Imperial fleet to request extraction, Sang-Wook's team politely informed him that all communications were being monitored and filtered. "We can't let you call for backup until we're ready," Sang-Wook explained. "Nothing personal, but we need time to prepare for what comes next." "What comes next?" Velthis asked. "Your Empire is going to learn that humanity isn't as helpless as they thought," Minho replied. "The question is whether they'll be smart enough to listen to reason, or if they'll do something stupid." The answer came sooner than expected. Sang-Wook's intelligence team intercepted a transmission from deep space. A massive Imperial fleet was already on its way to Terran space. The Emperor had decided that the situation required a more direct approach. "How many ships?" Hanul asked as they reviewed the intelligence data. "Over 100, Sang-Wook replied grimly. "It's a full battle fleet, equipped for planetary bombardment." Velthis went pale when he heard the numbers. "The 5th Imperial Fleet," he whispered. "They're not coming to rescue us, they're coming to destroy this entire system." "Why?" Minho demanded. "Because the Empire cannot allow primitives to capture Imperial personnel," Velthis replied. "It would set a dangerous precedent. Better to eliminate the entire species than risk looking weak." The revelation changed everything. What had begun as a rescue mission had become an intelligence operation that might determine the fate of humanity. The Vorthak crew found themselves in an impossible position. Their own empire was coming to kill them along with the humans who had saved their lives. "There has to be another way," Hanul said desperately. "There is," Velthis replied quietly, "but it would require your people to do something that my empire believes is impossible." "What?" "Win a war against forces that outnumber you 100 to 1. As the intercepted communications continued to arrive, one thing became clear. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn that their greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human technology. It had been underestimating human determination. The 5th Fleet was coming to end the human problem once and for all. What they would find waiting for them would change the course of galactic history. Emperor Thalan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Supremacy, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The 5th Imperial Fleet stretched out. Before him, 120 warships, the pride of the Vorthak military. Each vessel was centuries ahead of anything the primitive Terrans could possibly field. "Admiral Velthon," the Emperor addressed his fleet commander. "Remind me why. We're using an entire battle fleet against savages who have barely learned to leave their own planet." Admiral Velthon bowed respectfully. "Your Imperial Majesty, the loss of the eternal glory suggests that the Terrans may have salvaged our technology. We cannot risk underestimating them again." "Underestimating?" The Emperor laughed. "They're primitives with stolen toys. This fleet could destroy 1,000 worlds like theirs." What the Emperor didn't know was that every word of their conversation was being recorded by Tae-Hoon, Earth's most skilled intelligence officer. Hidden deep within the Vorthak communication networks, human cyber warfare specialists had been monitoring Imperial military traffic for weeks. "They're coming in force," Tae-Hoon reported to Admiral Yu Jin at Earth's military headquarters. "The entire 5th Fleet plus support vessels. They expect to glass the planet and be home in time for dinner." Admiral Yu Jin studied the tactical projections with grim determination. She was humanity's most experienced military commander, but she had never faced odds like these. The Vorthak fleet outgunned Earth's defenses by more than 10 to 1. "What about our secret weapons?" she asked. "Captain Jinwoo's battle group is ready," Tae-Hoon replied. The Indomitable and her escort ships are equipped with our latest quantum disruptors, but we only have 12 ships total against their 120. Numbers don't always determine the outcome, Yujin said quietly, especially when the enemy doesn't know what they're really fighting. The Indomitable was humanity's first true battlecruiser, designed specifically to fight alien technology. Captain Jinwoo had overseen her construction personally, incorporating every lesson learned from studying the captured Sentinel and the crashed Vorthak ship. She doesn't look like much, Jinwoo told his crew as they prepared for battle. But she's got surprises that no Vorthak engineer ever imagined. The ship's quantum disruptors were based on the same exotic matter technology that had defeated the Sentinels, but Jinwoo's engineers had made improvements, creating weapons that could tear through conventional shields like paper. The battle plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of trying to stop the Imperial fleet at the edge of the solar system, Earth's forces would let them come. The Sentinel stations, now under human control thanks to Tyhoon's hacking efforts, would allow the Vorthak ships to pass unopposed. Let them think they're winning, Admiral Yujin explained to her commanders. Let them come all the way to Earth orbit before we show them what we're really capable of. The Fifth Fleet entered Terran space 3 days later. Admiral Velthon was surprised when the Sentinel stations didn't challenge them, but he assumed the automated systems had recognized Imperial authority. The quarantine network is standing down, his tactical officer reported. We have clear passage to the third planet. As expected, Velthon replied. Primitive savages couldn't possibly control Imperial technology, but as the fleet approached Earth, something unexpected happened. The planet was defended. Sir, I'm detecting multiple contacts, the sensor operator called out. 12 vessels, unknown configuration, moving to intercept. Admiral Velthon studied the tactical display with confusion. The human ships were tiny compared to Imperial vessels, barely larger than escort fighters. 12 ships against our entire fleet? Are they insane? Perhaps they wish to surrender, suggested the tactical officer. No, Velthon said slowly. They're moving into attack formation. The primitives actually think they can fight us. The first engagement began at maximum range. Vorthak heavy cruisers opened fire with their plasma cannons, expecting to vaporize the human ships instantly. The energy beams lanced across space with devastating power. They passed harmlessly through empty space where the human ships should have been. What happened? Velthon demanded. How did we miss? Sir, the Terran vessels. They're not where our sensors say they are. The tactical officer replied, his voice confused. It's like they're shifting in and out of normal space. Captain Jinwoo smiled grimly as the Imperial fire missed his squadron. The exotic matter fields surrounding his ships were displacing them slightly out of phase with normal reality, making targeting nearly impossible. All ships commence attack run, he ordered. Show them what humanity can do. The Indomitable led the charge, accelerating directly toward the Imperial fleet's heavy cruisers. Vorthak point defense systems opened fire, filling space with energy beams and particle bursts, but the human ships continued their approach unharmed. Impossible, Admiral Velthon whispered. Our weapons are passing right through them. Then the human ships returned fire. The quantum disruptors were unlike anything in the Imperial arsenal. Instead of using conventional energy beams, they manipulated the fundamental forces that held matter together. When the first disruptor beam struck a Vorthak heavy cruiser, the ship's shields collapsed instantly. Shield failure on the Imperial Might, someone reported. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. How? Velthon demanded. Our shields can stop anything. The answer came as more human ships opened fire. One by one, Vorthak vessels found their shields useless against weapons their designers had never imagined. The Imperial Might broke apart as its hull structure failed. 2 more cruisers followed within minutes. Emperor Thalen watched the battle from his flagship with growing disbelief. His invincible fleet was being torn apart by a handful of primitive ships. Order all vessels to focus fire on a single target, he commanded. Concentrate everything on their lead ship. 50 Imperial vessels turned their weapons on the Indomitable. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a moon. But Captain Jinwoo's ship continued its attack run as if the enemy fire didn't exist. Sir, Their weapons aren't even touching us, his tactical officer reported. The exotic matter fields are deflecting everything. Then let's show them what real firepower looks like, Jinwoo replied. The Indomitable's main battery opened fire on the Imperial flagship. The quantum disruptor beam struck the divine supremacy amidships, punching through shields and armor like they were made of paper. "We're hit," someone screamed on the Imperial bridge. "Main power is failing." Emperor Thalan stared at the damage reports in shock. His flagship, the most powerful vessel in the Imperial fleet, had been crippled by a single shot from a primitive human ship. But the worst was yet to come. Tae-hoon had spent weeks infiltrating the Sentinel network's control systems. Now he activated his masterpiece, turning the Empire's own quarantine weapons against them. "Sentinel stations coming online," he reported to Admiral Yujin. Targeting Imperial vessels, the massive Sentinel spheres which the Vorthak had built to keep humanity imprisoned suddenly turned their weapons on the Imperial fleet. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids began picking off Vorthak ships one by one. "The Sentinels are firing on us," Admiral Velthon called out in panic. "They're supposed to be protecting us." "The primitives," Emperor Thalan said slowly, realization dawning. "They've turned our own weapons against us." The battle became a massacre. Imperial ships found themselves caught between human vessels they couldn't hit, and their own defensive systems turned hostile. One by one, the pride of the Vorthak military was reduced to scrap and vapor. Captain Jinwoo led his squadron through the chaos, picking off damaged Imperial vessels with surgical precision. The quantum disruptors made short work of any ship. They targeted, while the exotic matter fields kept the human vessels untouchable. "Admiral Velthon to all ships," came the desperate transmission. "General retreat. All vessels withdraw immediately." But it was too late for most of the fleet. The Sentinels had positioned themselves perfectly to prevent escape, while Jinwoo's ships hunted down any vessel that tried to flee. Of the 120 ships that had entered Terran space, only 7 managed to escape. The 5th Imperial fleet, the most powerful military force in Vorthak history, had been annihilated by 12 human ships in the Empire's own defensive systems. Emperor Thalan's flagship limped away from Earth with massive damage, its proud hull scarred by weapons. The Empire's finest scientists couldn't understand. "How?" he whispered to himself as they fled. "How did primitives defeat the greatest fleet in galactic history?" Admiral Velthon, nursing injuries from the battle, provided the answer that would haunt the Empire for generations to come. "Your Imperial Majesty," he said quietly, "I don't think they're primitives anymore." The news of the Fifth Fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy within days. The Vorthak Empire, which had ruled through fear and superior technology for thousands of years, had been humbled by the very species they had dismissed as savage. But the real impact was felt on worlds throughout Imperial space, where conquered species suddenly realized that the Empire was not invincible. The human victory had done more than defend Earth. It had lit a spark of rebellion that would spread from system to system until the very foundations of the news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The 5th Imperial Fleet, pride of the Vorthak Empire, had been destroyed by the primitive humans of Terra. What had been whispered in secret was now undeniable truth. The Empire was not invincible. On the mining world of Kelthar Prime, deep beneath the surface, slave workers stopped their endless digging as the news reached them through hidden communication networks. For 300 years, the Keltharan people had served the Empire, their beautiful crystal cities reduced to industrial complexes, feeding the Imperial war machine. Kethlan, a former military commander turned mine supervisor, gathered his trusted friends in the depths of Tunnel 7. "Is it true?" asked Morthan, his face showing the scars of Imperial punishment devices. "Did the humans really destroy an entire fleet?" "The reports are confirmed," Kethlan replied quietly. 12 human ships against 120 Imperial vessels. The humans won. The implications were staggering. For centuries, the Keltharan resistance had planned and waited, knowing that direct confrontation with the Empire meant certain death. But if humans could defeat Imperial fleets, perhaps other species could fight back too. Meanwhile, on Earth, Wu Jin was preparing for humanity's first diplomatic mission beyond the solar system. As Earth's leading diplomat, he had spent months learning about galactic politics and the various species under imperial rule. "We have an opportunity here," he told Admiral Yu Jin during their final briefing. "The Empire's defeat has weakened their control over dozens of worlds. If we can coordinate with local resistance movements, we might be able to liberate entire systems." Admiral Yu Jin nodded. "What do you need?" "Ships, technology, and proof that humanity is willing to help other species fight for their freedom," Wu Jin replied. "If we can demonstrate that the Empire can be beaten, the resistance movements will rally to our cause." Captain Su'a commanded the exploration vessel New Horizon, humanity's first ship designed for long-range diplomatic missions. Her crew was carefully selected from volunteers who understood they might not be coming home. "Remember," Wu Jin briefed, then before departure, "we're not just representing Earth. We're representing the possibility of freedom for every species under Imperial rule." The New Horizon launched from Earth orbit 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol. Her destination was the Ashanti system, where intelligence reports suggested a major resistance movement was already active. The Ashanti had once been a proud warrior culture, their homeworld covered with vast cities that celebrated art and combat in equal measure. The Imperial conquest had turned their world into a military training ground, forcing Ashanti warriors to fight for the Empire against other oppressed species. General Ashkara led the largest resistance cell on the Ashanti homeworld. She had been planning an uprising for years, but the arrival of human signals changed everything. "They're requesting permission to land," her communications officer reported. "It's a single ship, human design, carrying diplomatic credentials." "Humans," Ashkara mused. "The ones who destroyed the Fifth Fleet. What do they want with us?" The answer came when Wu Jin met with resistance leaders in a hidden cave complex outside the capital city. "We're here to offer you something the Empire never will," he said simply. "A choice." "What kind of choice?" Ashkara asked suspiciously. "The choice to be free," Wu Jin replied. "We can provide you with weapons and technology that can defeat Imperial forces. In return, we ask that you help us liberate other worlds." Prove their sincerity. Captain Su'a's team demonstrated human quantum disruptor technology. A single shot from a portable version of the weapon destroyed an abandoned Imperial bunker that had withstood years of conventional attacks. "This is how you defeated their fleet," Ashkara said with growing excitement. "Your weapons ignore their shields." "More than that," Wu Jin explained. "Our technology represents a completely different approach to warfare. The Empire has never faced enemies who think like we do." Meanwhile, similar meetings were taking place throughout the galaxy. Hojin, working as humanity's revolutionary coordinator, had made contact with resistance movements on over 30 worlds. Each group received the same offer: human technology and tactical support in exchange for coordinated action against the Empire. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been oppressed for centuries suddenly saw hope for the first time. The Mordun, master strategists who had been forced to serve as Imperial tactical advisors, began sharing military intelligence with human agents. The Zilani, whose peaceful nature had made them ideal administrators, started sabotaging Imperial bureaucracy from within. But the most dramatic response came from an unexpected source. On Vorthak Prime itself, the Empire's capital world, cracks were beginning to show. The destruction of the Fifth Fleet had shaken the government's confidence, and whispers of rebellion were growing even among Imperial citizens. Senator Velkath had served the Empire loyally for decades, but the reports from Terra troubled him deeply. During a closed session of the Imperial Senate, he raised questions that no one wanted to hear. "How did our most powerful fleet lose to a handful of primitive ships?" he demanded. "What aren't we being told about these humans?" "They got lucky," replied Senator Morgath, a hardliner who advocated for the complete destruction of Earth. "Primitives with stolen technology, nothing more." "Stolen from whom?" Velkath pressed. "Our own reports show that human technology is completely unlike anything we've ever encountered. They're not using our systems, they've developed something entirely different." The debate in the Imperial Senate reflected a growing division within the Empire. Conservative elements wanted to send an even larger fleet to destroy Earth and its allies. Progressive voices argued for negotiation and peaceful coexistence. Emperor Thalan, still recovering from his injuries in the Battle of Sol, was no longer the confident ruler he had once been. The humans had humiliated him personally, destroying his flagship and forcing him to flee like a common criminal. "Summon the Grand Admiral," he ordered his advisors. "If the Fifth Fleet wasn't enough, we'll send the entire Imperial Navy." But mobilizing the Navy would take time, and every day of delay allowed the resistance movements to grow stronger. On Kelthar Prime, Kethlan's miners had received their first shipment of human weapons. The quantum disruptors were small enough to hide in mining equipment, but powerful enough to destroy Imperial patrol ships. "The uprising begins tonight," he told his followers. "We strike the garrison, capture their communications center, and broadcast our Declaration of Independence." The Keltharan Revolution started at midnight local time. Imperial forces were caught completely off guard as mining equipment was suddenly transformed into weapons of war. Quantum disruptors, disguised as geological scanners, tore through Imperial defenses with ease. Within 6 hours, the entire planet was free. Similar uprisings erupted across the galaxy. The Ashanti warriors, armed with human technology and tactics, overwhelmed Imperial training facilities and liberated their homeworld. The Morden used their strategic expertise to coordinate multi-system attacks that left Imperial forces scattered and confused. Captain Su'a found herself at the center of a galactic revolution. The New Horizon became a mobile command center, coordinating resistance movements and delivering supplies to dozens of worlds. "Admiral Yujin, this is Su'a," she reported during one of her regular communications with Earth. "We've established contact with resistance groups in 47 systems. 22 worlds have already declared independence from the Empire." "What's the Imperial response?" Yujin asked. "They're pulling back to defend their core systems," Su'a replied. "The outer territories are in complete revolt, but our intelligence suggests they're preparing something big." That something became clear when Ho-Jin intercepted communications from the Imperial capital. Emperor Thalan had made a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. "They're mobilizing everything," Ho-Jin reported to the resistance commanders. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in the Imperial arsenal. They're going to make one final push to crush the rebellion." "Where?" Wu-Jin asked. "Vorthak Prime," Ho-Jin replied. "The Emperor is calling all Imperial forces home to defend the capital. He's abandoned the outer territories completely." The news created both opportunity and danger. With Imperial forces concentrated around their homeworld, the liberated systems would be safe, but it also meant that the final battle would be the largest military engagement in galactic history. "We need to coordinate with all the resistance movements," Wu-Jin said during an emergency conference. "If we can hit Vorthak Prime with everything we have, we can end this war in one decisive battle." Admiral Yu-Jin agreed to commit Earth's entire fleet to the operation. The human ships that had defeated the Fifth Fleet would lead a coalition of liberated species against the Empire's last stronghold. But as the Alliance forces gathered for the final assault, everyone knew that this battle would be different. Galaxy. Empire was no longer underestimating their enemies. They would be fighting with the desperation of a regime facing extinction. The question was whether the spirit of freedom that had united dozens of species would be enough to overcome the Empire's final gamble. As the Allied fleets prepared to jump to Vorthak Prime, Captain Su'a sent a final message to Earth.